Many times you only hear about absolute solutions to a problem. It's either all or nothing. I'd like to present to you why making one little change can go a long way in making things better for your health, for our animals, and for the planet, simply by eating less meat. Here's why it's better for your health. Red meat, especially, contributes to heart disease and increases the risk of your stroke. It contains omega-6 fatty acids, which are very dangerous, especially for mental problems. A National Cancer Institute study of 500,000 people found that those who ate the most red meat daily were 30% more likely to die of any cause during a 10-year period than were those that ate the least amount of red meat. Sausage, luncheon meats, any kind of processed meats also increase the risk. The Mayo Clinic recommends when eating meat in any one meal that to eat only 3 ounces should take up no more than a quarter size of your plate, a quarter portion of your plate. The Forks Over Knives movement studied long-term health records and discovered how eating meat increases risk of cancer and heart disease. They also suggest that eating a plant-based whole foods diet can prevent, halt, and even reverse such sicknesses. The NRDC says people who live near factory farms suffer from health issues from breathing in the noxious gases. And for those of you that don't know, a factory farm is intensive animal farming where animals are crowded together in tiny spaces to produce the most meat that they can on the smallest amount of land. The waste from these animals ends up in these lagoons, they're called. They're just huge open pits of manure. It could be an acre big for each farm. And they spill over, the barriers break, it gets into the groundwater, and the disease is just prominent in these because they feed these animals antibiotics, which then creates superbugs. And with these superbugs, creates antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which makes it harder to treat human disease. Our medicine for these diseases just won't work anymore. Remember swine flu? Well, what did they do? Let's change the name to H1N1 so people start eating pork again because the pork prices started to fall. Pretty sneaky, huh? Let me also tell you why it's better for animals. Animals are sentient beings. That means they're capable of perceiving and or feeling things. One Green Planet states, many of the cruelties inherent in factory farming stem from the sheer number of animals packed onto each farm. Pigs and cows are confined by the thousands, and birds by the hundreds of thousands. Overcrowded conditions heighten animal stress, lower their immunity, and allow disease to spread like wildfire. They live nearly their entire lives without ever feeling the sun on their backs or the grass beneath their feet. Instead, they spend months on end crammed inside barren, often windowless sheds, standing in their own feces and urine, and breathing in toxic, choking fumes from accumulated waste. Here's a picture of what factory farming looks like. It's a lot different from the happy little farms you see on TV. Here's where your commercial eggs come from. They spend their whole lives jammed into those crates. Here are mother pigs. They stay in gestation crates for however long they're alive. They can't even turn around. They can barely lay down. This is foie gras. It's a duck force-fed by a pipe to fatten its liver. And these are veal calves. Boy cows that are birthed to mothers on dairy farms are useless, so they found a use for them. They pack them in tiny stalls until they're shipped off to become veal for your plate. Mother cows probably have it the worst. They're constantly impregnated, have their babies ripped away from them, and cry for days to have their baby back until they're inseminated again and go through it over and over again until eventually they're useless and they're put up for slaughter. Let me tell you about the effects on the environment from meat. Factory farming accounts for 20% of all anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, all man-made greenhouse gas emissions. To put that in perspective, all transportation accumulates only 13%. Trains, cars, ships, everything. 40% of the land in the U.S. is used to raise farm animals. It's the cause of 80% of rainforest destruction. The leading cause, just clearing land to graze animals and grow crops for them. And why would you want to give money to a handful of huge corporations, also known as Big Ag, who skirt laws, get subsidized by the government, and aren't required to clean up after themselves? Just cleaning their mess would cause them all to go bankrupt. Support a family farm. And to speak of water usage, it takes almost 2,500 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of hamburger. If you see, it only takes 19 for tomatoes. Vegetables require very little water. It's all the animal products that require the most water. So what are alternatives? Well, you may think it's too hard, but really just a few changes can make a huge difference. You could become a vegetarian. There's several different versions. You could just eat no animal products, no dairy, or you could eat dairy and no eggs or any animal products. There's vegetarians that eat dairy and eggs but no meat. Pescatarians who eat fish, polo-vegetarians who eat poultry. There's fruitarians who only eat fruit and nuts that don't kill the plants. And there's also meatless Mondays. And if everybody in America incorporated one meatless day a week, it would be the equivalent of taking off 240 million cars off the road. Then there's also the locavore. Support a local family farm to get your meat. It's less burden on the environment, less stressful living conditions, and consequently animals shed fewer pathogens. No hormones or antibiotics are used when raising them, and there's consequently less suffering. You can still eat meat, but you'll likely eat less. And here's a map. If you're wondering how many factory farms, this is what we're dealing with. To quote Evelyn Pluhar from her article, Meat and Morality, Alternatives to Factory Farming, perhaps it is not an impossible dream to foresee a future in which meat lovers are horrified by our past farming practices.